Call to order the Police Accountability Board regular meeting for Wednesday, October 11th, 2023. The PAB has resumed in-person meetings and encourages community members to attend in person. Community members attending in person should observe the health and safety protocols for in-person meetings of Berkeley boards and commissions as outlined by the City of Berkeley. The PAB acknowledges that physical attendance may not be feasible for all community members. To this end, the Office of Director of Police Accountability has been exploring the option of allowing for remote participation at the PAB meetings. Please note that the ODPA and the PAB are in the early stages of implementing this hybrid meeting format, so there is a possibility for technical glitches and errors. Your patience and understanding are greatly appreciated. To access this meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device using this URL listed below. If you do not wish for your name to appear on screen, use the drop-down menu and click on Rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. To join by phone, dial 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 826-5339-6072. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press star 9 and wait to be recognized. Brings us to the Berkeley Land Acknowledgement. The City of Berkeley recognizes that the community we live in was built on the territory of the Huichin, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chocho-speaking Ohlone people, the ancestral descendants of the Osama Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to all the Ohlone tribes and descendants of the Verona Band. As we begin our meeting tonight, we acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of Berkeley, the documented 5,000-year history of a vibrant community at the West Berkeley Shell Mound, and the Ohlone people who continue to reside in the East Bay. We recognize that Berkeley's residents have and continue to benefit from the use and occupation of this unceded stolen land since the City of Berkeley's incorporation in 1878. As stewards of the laws regulating the City of Berkeley, it is not only vital that we recognize the history of this land, but also recognize that the Ohlone people are present members of Berkeley and other East Bay communities today. Bless you. And that brings us to roll call. Director?
Yes. Good evening, Chair Moore. Roll call. Chair Moore.
Present.
We got Board Member Lethbridge.
Here.
Board Member Brett Blackaby.
Here.
Board Member Leah Wilson has an excused absence. And Chair Moore, we have one new board member that we will be administering the oath of office and confidentiality shortly. And we have a request for a just cause from board member Kitty Catalina, who's currently logged in from the phone. So you would have to take your first action to consider her just cause attendance remotely.
Oh, let that be the first thing we do. We're asking for a just cause for Board Member Calvita to attend this meeting remotely. Can I ask for a second in a vote, or do we just vote?
Yeah, let's do a second and a vote.
I'll second that.
So, Chair Moore,
Yes.
Board Member Lethbridge,
Yes.
Board Member Blackaby.
Yes.
And reaching out to legal, does the board member in question get to vote on this?
I'm actually not sure that the just cause provisions require a vote of the board, but sure.
Board Member Catalina?
I vote yes.
Okay.
Can I just confirm I'm on audio but not video?
You're on video.
Okay.
The motion passes.
Yes. And that will take us to agenda item number 2, which is the approval of the agenda. Is there any changes, anything we would like to move around or Any issue with at this point? Now is our time.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second. Flint, I'm not seeing any no votes at this time. We're gonna go ahead and say that's approved. And that brings us to agenda item number 3. And that's public comment. And before public comment starts, I want to make sure that we all operate with a thought of decorum and making sure that everyone feels represented and protected in the room.
Okay, would you like to begin with the board members in person or the the members of the public in person or?
In person first, please.
Sure. Okay, sir, you're recognized to speak before the board.
My name is Russell Bates. I've been a member of Berkeley Cop Watch for the last 27 years. And I'm here to say that we would urge you, and I urge you, and specifically to make sure you always keep a spine regarding the police activities in Berkeley. If you're a little concerned about that, we'll gather people who will be your spine for you. And I would like to ask the chief to remind her officers that despite my appearance, despite my US Navy veteran hat and my marching down the street when I walk, I'm told I do that. I'm not a member of a militia. I haven't shot a weapon since I got out of the Navy in 1970, but it's not inconceivable that nothing's inconceivable these days. So I would ask you, I'm here specifically for item 9, the text gate thing. And I would urge you to be as specific about that as you can and detailed about that and make plans for action. And please do not give up your power like the Police Review Commission did over time. Try to gain more power. That's all. I'll be reporting when we get to the chief of police report and item 9. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public present that would like to address the board at this time? Now we're gonna move on to members of the public that are joining us remotely. If you're interested in speaking with the board, please raise your hand icon. Mr. Charles Clark, I see you. I'm going to promote you to speaker. Mr. Clark, you're on with the board. Please unmute yourself.
Mr. Director, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, I am Charles Clark. My first subject tonight concerns item 9A, the allegations against the bike unit. 7 weeks ago, I sent the director a memorandum on arrest quotas using BPD arrest data. I hope you've had a chance to look at it. In short, I found that arrests per officer in the bike unit were about 50% greater than the rest of BPD, not due to an arrest quota, but rather to the community policing character of the bike unit itself, which might also explain why the bike unit arrested proportionately fewer Black and Hispanic persons than the rest of the police department. Although I failed to find quantitative support for the alleged arrest quota, this board should most definitely investigate other issues raised by the text messages, particularly any racist or malicious communications among BPD officers during city work time. My second subject tonight is item 10A3, also known as Policy Complaint 2023 PR 8, starting at page 76 of tonight's packet. This was precipitated by a complaint in federal court against the off-duty action of a BPD sergeant, David Marble. I don't have much to say about the complaint itself for the practical reason that figuring out what happened is the job of the U.S. District Court, which also means while the court case is unresolved, this board is unlikely to obtain any useful information from the parties. I was more troubled by the 6-year-old cop watch video of Sergeant Marble's treatment of a Black man standing on the border of People's Park, which the police department could show in training under the title, How Not to Interact with the Public. The first thing the sergeant said to the bystander was, take your hands out of your pockets, no problem. The second thing the sergeant said was, don't give me that black crap. Huge problem. that inflamed the situation, which the sergeant further escalated by handcuffing the man for a short time before releasing him. This board should consider the violations of department policy in effect in July 2017. A short list might include General Order B4 on fair and impartial policing and Police Regulations 200 and 201 on reporting misconduct for the serious allegation of harassment on the basis of race. General Order H6 on handcuffing, which, quote, should be done only if reasonably necessary, unquote, and, quote, shall be documented in a police report, unquote. So my questions are, how did the PRC and the BPD address this episode in 2017, if at all? Are accounts of this episode on the video or others like them used in the police department's early warning system to monitor officer behavior? This is yet another occasion for me to tell this board to review the police department that Berkeley actually has, even if it's on a 6-year time delay. Thank you.
At this time, we're accepting any other members of the public that are joining us remotely. If you're interested in speaking with the board, please raise your hand icon so we can promote you to speaker. Mr. Chair, at this time, I'm not seeing any additional hand raises.
Okay, at this time, we'll move to agenda item number 4. Administering the oath of office and confidentiality, the newly appointed board member. Joshua, I want to make sure I get your name correct. Cayetano?
Cayetano, that's right.
All right. And Director, would you take care of the swearing in?
Thank you. And for the members of the public, just to transparency purposes, we administer the oath, or we submit the oath of office and confidentiality to the newly appointed board member electronically. They give it back to us. So at the meeting, at the first meeting, we do the ceremonial oath of office and confidentiality. Mr. Board Member Cayetano, would you mind standing up, please? And would you mind raising your right hand, please? And please repeat after me. I, Joshua Cayetano,
I, Joshua Cayetano,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am
discharge the duties upon which I am
about to enter.
about to enter.
I further swear or affirm
I further swear or affirm
that I will abide by
that I will abide by
and maintain the confidentiality
and maintain the confidentiality
of the personnel files
of the personnel files
of sworn employees of the police department
of sworn employees of the police department
and all other matters
and all other matters
that are confidential
that are confidential
pursuant to state and federal law.
pursuant to state and federal law.
Congratulations, Board Member Cayetano.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And with those congratulations, that moves us to agenda item number 5. That's the approval of the
Usually we allow, if you wanna, you elected board member, any words if you want to.
moving through the minutes. I apologize.
My only comment is that I'm grateful to be here and I'm excited to learn from all of you, especially the ones that have been here a long time. Excited to learn from your wisdom and from the wisdom of the community as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Now that we've taken that pause, and I apologize again, can we get to the approval of the minutes? I'm gonna ask that we take a look at each of them, and I'll ask for 3 approvals succinctly. So first, for the special meeting on September 14th, 2023, are there any changes, additions, subtractions that need to be made?
Move approval of those minutes.
A second.
Okay, not seeing or hearing any objection to that. I'm gonna move to the minutes for regular meeting of September 27th, 2023. Are there any additions, subtractions, or changes that need to be made to those minutes?
Second.
Not seeing any objections to that, I'm gonna go ahead and move to C, minutes of the special meeting of September 27th, 2023. Are there any changes, additions, or subtractions that need to be made?
Approval of those.
And a second.
And not seeing any objections, seeing or hearing, we're gonna go ahead and approve those as well. Which brings us to agenda item 6, the ODPA staff report. Director.
Good evening, Chair Moore, board members, members of the public, fellow staff members. We have Chief Lewis joining us remotely from the City Attorney's Office. We have Deputy City Attorney Stephen Hylas, and from City Manager's Office, we have our newly appointed reimagining staff member, Ms. Carrie Arredondo. I just wanted to give a gentle reminder that NACO is coming up next month. For any board member that's interested in attending, please let me know. We're trying to make any reservations. We do have significant salary savings to be able to bring any board member that's interested. So please let us know. I'll follow up via email. Earlier this year, Chair Moore said he's committed to bring in anybody and all board members that are interested. So we have kept some of our budgets aside for that. So please let me know. There's also another NACO training webinar taking place the 16th. And I don't know if our investigator Wechter, who's a NACO board member, if you wanted to comment on that.
Sure, this is a presentation by NACO's new Director of Training, Tina Barr, who has extensive experience in academia and training and as a teacher. And she looked at some of our presentations and realized we hadn't done anything specifically for people like those of you who sit on boards and commissions. They'd be new to that process and give them a sense of how to work effectively on the board, work effectively collaboratively, deal with some of the communications issues that might arise. So she's a wonderful presenter, wonderful speaker, and very, very enthused about this work. So I'm very much looking forward to that webinar. When was that again? It's going to be on Monday at 10 a.m. I believe.
Yes.
And if you can't make it after a month, it will be available on the NACO website. But if you do it live, you can, submit some questions if you have them. Great, thank you.
Could you send something around about that, just reminding us?
Sure.
Thank you.
We can send that. And the title is Group Stages and Dynamics, What to Expect when Working on Boards and Commissions. And if you haven't, we'll also send a link to sign up for any of the NACO listservs that they have. They have shared some good news and training opportunities like this. So we'll follow up with that. As I mentioned at the last at the last board meeting, we had a new staff member join our ranks. It's our policy analyst. She's going to be playing a dual role until we can finish our selection for the data analyst. Michelle Berger, we're really excited about her being part of us. She's she comes with a background of policy and data analysis, and she's also have done work with the Berkeley Police Department. So she has some background of the different things that we're doing here regarding public safety. I did have a video introduction for her. Unfortunately, I was unable to upload it because it's too large of a file. But I'll circulate that and include it as part of the record. We have been, one of the things that board member Leftwich brought up was a training regarding the spectrum of stops. I have been in discussion with Captain Durbin, who was here as the BPD representative at that time. We have identified some resources. There's one, a course that may get at what we believe you were looking at it, and we're just reviewing it to make sure. If it's not, we'll follow up with other resources. That is on our radar.
Thank you.
I also do want to make a correction in our past records. We might have included board member Leah Wilson as being a member of the subcommittee for conflict of interest. Board member Leftwich, who's chaired that, brought it to our attention that it was Vice Chair Harris, who was part of that subcommittee, and we have reviewed the minutes, and that seems to be accurate. Board Member Leah Wilson is not a member of that subcommittee at this time, so just wanted to correct that record.
I think maybe the confusion was that she had expressed some interest, and because our board numbers were so low, so we couldn't have three board members on the subcommittee. So maybe we will check back in with her to see if she's still interested.
Absolutely. Those are the immediate updates I have for now. If you have any questions and concerns, please let me know at this time, and be happy to address any or put it on my radar.
Does anyone have any questions for the director? Not seeing or hearing any. Thank you very much. This brings us to agenda item 7. This is chair and board member reports. My comments here will be brief. I do want to reinforce the director's words about NACOL and making that a priority in this education and the work that we do. I don't think I would have been able to get the jump start and the understanding if I had not participated. I was in class day in and day out, but it was worth it. The value to just get a base form of knowledge about this work was invaluable at that time. That's why I believe that everybody that does this should go. So if you can make that time, if you can find a way to break away to Chicago for a week in November and brave the cold, I'll be there with you. And that being said, I want to also recognize our new members of the board. Thank you for coming. Thank you for participating. Your energy and support is also, I'm going to use this word a lot today, but invaluable. As you come on, the work that we're going to ask you to do and the commitment, it is real, it is serious, and I appreciate you stepping up and taking this on. So I think that's important to recognize before we get into the muck that I say these words now. And I think at this time that's all I have. If there's any questions for me, I'm more than willing to answer. If any board member would like to say something at this time, I can open the floor.
Brief comment. Just wanted to thank Captain Okies and Sergeant Castle, Lieutenant Reese. I went on my ride along last week, so I just wanted to thank them for graciously inviting me and letting me be literally along for the ride for a few hours. Learned a lot, saw a lot, and so again, just appreciation for that opportunity. And thanks to the chief and her team for making that possible.
Well,
Before, I was actually able to pull up the video if you would.
sure. Let's go ahead and meet our new ODPA policy analyst, Michelle Berger.
My name is Michelle Berger, and I am the new policy analyst with Office of the I look forward to supporting you as civilian oversight provided. I recently received my Master of Public Policy.
Sorry, if I may, I think I have to share the sound so the members that are joining us remotely can hear. So thank you.
Right here.
Going to.
You have to click, there was a checkbox in the bottom left.
For the
your
shared sound, yeah.
Mhm.
I was looking for it. A little difficult there. That's good. Okay.
The Police Accountability Board and the public. My name is Michelle Berger, and I am the new policy analyst
with the Office of the Director of Police Accountability. I look forward to supporting your work as civilian oversight practitioners by providing research and data analysis. I recently received my Master of Public Policy from the Goldman School of Public Policy at UC Berkeley. I have worked in public safety for 2 years with the cities of Albany and Berkeley and the county of Alameda. In Albany, I worked with a team to design a pilot program for non-police response intervention for mental health, addiction, and homelessness community crises. With Alameda County, I worked on post-pandemic moratorium eviction diversion. Here, I worked to develop a county-wide policy proposal to implement a court-based eviction diversion program. I did my master's thesis through a research partnership with the Berkeley Police Department, examining the rising gun violence with an eye toward avenues of prevention. I performed data analyses of Berkeley's gun violence, reviewed the relevant literature on causes and prevention, and made policy recommendations based on Berkeley's particular type of gun violence. Prior to that, I worked at consulting for candidates and ballot measures for 10 years. My undergraduate degrees are in political science and sociology of law and society from UC Davis. I am Venezuelan American and grew up in the Bay Area. I am excited to remain here with my family as I approach this new endeavor.
Sorry about the sound. Thanks, Joy.
Okay, and with that takes us to agenda item 8. This is the Chief of Police report. Greetings, Chief.
Good
Yeah.
evening, greetings. Happy to see all of you. I wanted to start by also welcoming Mr. Cayetano. I look forward to meeting you in person, and I'm happy to set up the same kind of tour and ride-alongs that board member Blackaby was able to get. It's a really good opportunity for us to do an introduction to the police department, and look forward to meeting you in person. I did want to start this evening sharing a couple cases that occurred since the last meeting that you held, where Captain Durbin represented the department. On the 1st of October at approximately 1:32 a.m., BPD officers were dispatched to an armed robbery in progress in the area of California and 62nd. While on the way to that call, one of the victims told the police department that the suspect there had fired a shot with a gun. Officers who arrived on scene, the suspect was still on scene and then fled. Officers gave chase, caught up with the suspect, who was reaching for his waistband, and officers were able to take the subject to the ground, detain him in handcuffs, and underneath him found a ghost gun, 9mm ghost gun without the magazine in it. Back at the scene of the attempted robbery, officers did locate a spent shell casing and an extended magazine containing 9mm ammo. I also wanted to share some work that our detectives have engaged in since the last report. On October 4th, they arrested a suspect in a carjacking that had occurred several months prior to that. In that particular case, the suspects chased the victim on foot, physically assaulted the victim, and then stole his car keys. They then got into the car and, while driving away, struck the victim, causing him to break his leg from the impact. On October 7th, another suspect was arrested from carjacking that also had occurred several months prior to that. In that case, the victim was parking her vehicle when she was approached by several suspects pointing rifles at her, demanding her keys. When the victim got out of the car, suspects fled in her vehicle. That suspect was arrested after a vehicle pursuit in another jurisdiction. I did want to share something that's a little more global. Over the course of the last week, we have fielded a number of questions from our community and from council around the developing events taking place in Israel and Palestine and the possible effects it might have in Berkeley. So the Berkeley Police Department has a situational awareness group, our SAG group. Their responsibility is monitoring the threat landscape when things like this happen and assessing what resources and additional information we might need to know in our city. And then also working with both local, state, and federal organizations to assess threats, to gather information and turn it into intelligence to understand what measures we might need to take to keep our community safe. Along with that, is our work engaged in addressing hate crimes and hate incidents in our city. We have experienced a number of hate incidents over the course of the last week that we have been documented. We've also have very strong relationships with local synagogues and our businesses in the area. And so when events like this happen, we immediately reach out. We start discussing what safety measures may need to be in place, and where appropriate, make sure our patrol officers are aware of what's happening and what locations they need help keep an eye on, and also support those communities. In regards to our staffing, I did want to share that of our current 181 authorized officers, we're at 152. That includes 5 officers in the training program and 4 officers that are currently in the academy, slated to graduate in December of this year. Additionally, we have 2 conditional job offers for police officer recruits for an academy that starts this month, and then also another academy that starts in January. The communication center, who's approved for 36 dispatchers. Currently, we have 24, 5 of whom are in training. We do have a number of others who are in backgrounds. And I know that Captain Durbin at the last meeting fielded a question about a list of departmental policies that had been updated. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call.
We lost you, chief.
Maybe
You lost your sound.
maybe she's on the phone.
No. Not yet. To be on our end.
Board member Calavita, can you give us a mic check? Can you hear us? You're on mute.
I can hear you, yes.
Thank you.
I understood the chief had gotten a phone call, so she was off for a minute.
I think it's when she tried to get back on.
Oh.
We'll resolve that. We'll give her a minute or so to log back on.
All right, my apologies. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, you're back.
All right, it took me 7 tries to get that worked out. So I know that you had asked Captain Durbin for a list of policies that had been either updated or implemented since the inception of the accountability board. He did share with me that he's working on pulling that together and wanted me to share that with you. Finally, something I'm really excited to share with the board. We are applying to bring a training program to our department. It's called Active Bystandership for Law Enforcement. It's known as ABLE. We want to bring this training program to the department, and this program was created by Georgetown Law, and it's an initiative designed to empower officers to build a culture of peer intervention that prevents misconduct, reduces mistakes, promotes health and wellness of our officers. So this supports our overall departmental mission about having leaders at every level of our organization, and also, continues to push forward on our expectation of culture of both accountability, professionalism, and employee wellness in our work. So as part of that application process, we sought letters of recommendation from community-based organizations, and we're happy to receive letters of support from both the Dorothy Day House and the Center for Food, Faith, and Justice. Also, as part of that application process is a commitment on our part to regularly update the board on our work around that training, what training topics we'll be covering. And it's not a one-time training. So basically what happens is we send officers to become trainers in this subject matter. They go through a course that teaches them to be trainers. They then teach all of our employees across the board. So all of our staff, both sworn and professional staff, they do the program. But then every year there's additional training that happens to continue to reinforce and remind our staff about those important elements. So if we are accepted into this program and all goes well, my goal is that we be implementing that early next year. So that's all the formal comments I have. Happy to take any questions.
And I'm gonna open it up to the board. Any questions for the chief? Now's the time. I'm not seeing or hearing any, chief. That means you did a great job. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to agenda item number 9, subcommittee reports. And that will take us to 9A, policy and practices relating to the downtown task force and bike union allegations. Chair Calvina?
Yes, so I'm chair of this subcommittee and Chair Moore is the other member. We only had 2 members of this subcommittee because for quite a while we didn't have enough board members to have more than 2 on a subcommittee. So here we are, the 2 of us. So very quickly, this is a very brief review and status update of our downtown task force subcommittee. So first, a quick reminder. On November 10th last year, former department officer Shadowdy, who'd been a member of the downtown task force but was terminated for misconduct, wrote the Berkeley City Council alleging that text messages expressing racist attitudes, bias against the unhoused, and arrest quotas had been sent among members of the downtown task force and bike team. The allegations included screenshots of the texts. In December, the law firms Swanson and McNamara was hired to conduct an external investigation of those allegations, and that report was completed last June. And while the complete report was not released or made public, what was made public was that the text messages taken from Shadowdy's phone had been authenticated. So while that investigation was going on, the PAB began its own inquiry, which consists of a policy and practices review that will result in recommendations for policy changes, both narrow and quite broad. The city's interpretation of the charter amendment, and this is very important for the public in particular to hear, the city's interpretation of the charter amendment is such that the PAB cannot launch an investigation into potential wrongdoing in the absence of an individual complaint being filed. So investigating potential misconduct is not our focus in the downtown task force inquiry, except as it applies to necessary policy reforms. Our report will consist of detailed statistics and recommendations for important policy changes. I should also say that we're fully aware that policy changes are only meaningful to the extent that they're enforced on the ground. It's the role of this accountability board to ensure that any policy changes coming out of our policy inquiry are fully enforced. And the subcommittee hopes to complete its report and bring it to the full board and then council before the end of the year. I don't know if it's appropriate to take any questions. We don't usually do that, but I suppose if there's any pressing questions, I could answer them.
I'm gonna open that up to board members if you have anything that you wanna.
Please remind, Board Member Calvita, that report goes to the city attorney's office first and it comes to us. I'm trying to remember the process there. Is that right? Okay.
And Chair Moore, I don't know if you would want to add anything to the report.
I think that was a great review and evaluation of where we are now. That was perfect, Board Member Calvita. Which takes us to fair and impartial policing, where we also have Chair Calvita. Would you like to give us a status update there, please?
Yes, I'm also the chair of that subcommittee, and board member Wilson is the other board member on that. And a public member, George Lipman, joins us. The PAB was assigned responsibility for monitoring and assessing the department's, the police department's implementation of the fair and impartial policing reforms that were mandated by council, you might remember, back in February 2021. as council voted unanimously to pass the recommendation of the mayor's working group on fair and impartial policing recommendations for policy changes. All of that came in the wake of the George Floyd murder and other events around the country. The PAB subcommittee since then has met many times, initially with representatives of the police department, and then independently to monitor progress toward implementation, since we were given that role by City Council. Over the last several months, we've focused our attention on producing a report that will ultimately go to Council. It will include statistics on racial disparities in stops, searches, and uses of force, and will look carefully at each of the Council's mandated reforms and make recommendations where appropriate for improvements in the implementation of those reforms. And again, we hope to have that report ready to take to the full board soon, and after that to Council.
Thank you, Board Member Calavita. Appreciate the updates. That would take us to agenda item number 10, where we have old business. And 10A is presentation of new policy complaint number 2023 PR 0005.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
This is a complaint that the board recommended at the last meeting that we hold off upon request of the complainant, so she can be allowed the time to present it. I do believe the complainant is here. Ms. White, are you present with us today?
Yes, I am.
Ms. White, if you would like to address the board, you get up to 5 minutes to present your policy complaint. And then they will be able to ask you any questions if you have, if they have any, and they'll be able to make a determination of what to do with your policy.
May I sit down while I think my
Absolutely.
at the table?
Yes, dear. At the table if you like.
Thank you. My husband will come with me.
Thank you, ma'am.
While she's moving, do you have a physical copy of the agenda?
Yes.
Name is Ann White. I am an official grandmother. I'm just months short of 80 years old. Don't let the blue jeans fool you. It's important for us to state clearly that our family supports effective policing. I was an urban economist, and although I'm not employed at 80, for any community to thrive, the community must have a well-paid police officers and staff who are well-educated, appropriately trained, supplied with necessary tools, and effectively managed. In our policy complaints, although there's a fair amount of terror in our written complaints, we address specific issues we believe need to be changed to protect the quiet enjoyment of all the homes, all the residents of the city of Berkeley, and to appropriately use limited police resources. Our home was built in 1909. Unfortunately, I was putting in earthquake bracing on the 17th of October, 1989. The building was badly damaged, further damaged by the rain, and damaged again by the insurance company's chicanery. We rebuilt our house on our own. It took 17 years. June 13th, 2007, we had finally finished rebuilding. My husband was out of town. I went out to dinner with friends to celebrate. As I left the building, I turned on the big construction fans. The first call for the fire was 9:14. The building was destroyed. Second insurance company similarly was less than eager to pay. I got help from the state of California. According to one of the senior engineers for the county of Alameda, our home is the strongest residential property in the county. I didn't want to do it again. Also, police sprinkler. We rebuilt twice. And we rebuilt twice because we believed we lived in a good neighborhood. We believed we lived in a good city. Unfortunately, on April 1st, 2017, Jurginder Mehta and his family purchased condominium property next to us. I have a map if someone needs to see it. That building is legally, according to all of the records I've been able to find, is a 4-bedroom, 2-bath property. It was advertised for rent as a 7-bedroom, 5-bath property. It has, in the last 6.5 years, been occupied by as many as 20 individuals. It is advertised as being 2,000 square feet, when the records show it should be 1,400. I can go year by year to tell you the harassment that has continued. It's not useful. The harassment has continued. The students contend that it is their civil right to make noise 24 hours a day. And they have fulfilled their civil right for 6+ years. Currently, there is a less aggressive group in the house, all female, presumably sports academics at the university. The day they moved in, they decided to have a party behind the building because obviously we wouldn't be able to see them from our deck. However, measuring the sound from our deck, not at the property line, the sound level meter registered over 100 decibels. The police didn't come.
Mr. Sweat, if I could just interrupt you briefly, Mr. Chair, just to let you know, we're at the 6-minute mark. The time allotted is subject to discretion of the chair.
Let's put 3 more minutes on the, and just to let, Ms. Wayne knows yes.
You have 3 minutes, Mr. White.
Thank you. 2 good officers, one Officer C. Waite and the other Michael Bellier, 2 different times, 2 different circumstances, pointed out to us that police in Berkeley are neither trained nor supplied with appropriate tools to be able to measure sound. It has been left out of the packet, but there is a NIOSH sound level meter. It is available for free. According to the Attorney General's office, this is acceptable in all state and federal courts. It comes complete with a manual on how to use it. I would propose that officers be supplied this on their city phones and that they would learn how to use it. Alternately, a noise control officer does not have to be a uniformed officer. I'm not sure that I think a uniformed officer with a badge and a gun is necessary to use a sound level meter. In the same way that parking patrol does not need to be a uniformed officer, badged officer. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
So both of these officers said to me, it didn't seem like a good use of officer time. And they were surprised when I agreed with them. But it's the only option we had. Second issue. There is in Berkeley Municipal Code 1340, a long description of what people can be ticketed for, if that's the right word, for making outrageous noise. The city of Berkeley has added to their information that the only time you can ticket someone for noise is if there are 10 people making noise. So 5 people drunk, puking, fighting, screaming at each other under our bedroom window. A police officer is restrained by this directive letter from actually doing anything about it. We've been harassed intentionally. The harassment continues. It's much less this year. It's been up and down depending on the character of the anywhere from 7 to 20 people living in this building. We would like to support the police, that they should be given the tools to do their job effectively, which includes a sound level meter. NIOSH is pretty acceptable. Doesn't even take a very new phone. This is not a very new phone. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just under your standard rules, after the complainant's presentation, you are allowed to take comments from members of the public up to 3 minutes. Then after that, you will allow the DPD given an opportunity to respond to the board. And the board would also have the opportunity to ask questions of the complainant.
Why don't we go ahead and open it up to the public now?
Any members of the public that are present in person, if you'd like to address this complaint? Any members of the public who are joining us remotely, if you would like to comment on this current policy complaint, you are able to address the board for up to 3 minutes. Please raise your hand icon if you would like to make a comment at this time. Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any hand raises at this time from the members of the public joining us virtually.
So then I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to the board for questions. My next,
Yes.
excellent. So we're gonna keep this informal. If you guys would just like to ask a couple of questions. That's where we are. Please go ahead.
Over the last 6 or 7 years, how many kind of separate calls, just so roughly speaking, there's kind of, how many times has this happened?
It has been up and down depending on the year.
Yeah.
We recognize the dispatchers by their voices by now. During the worst 2 years, probably 3 times a week. Not a good use of police time. The second year of the 7 years, were a household of 7 or 8 women. There were 2 groups. They disagreed on some social issues. Those disagreements ended in hair pulling, face scratching, screaming and yelling fights night after night. The year after that, we're a group who played games, video games. That's probably the wrong word. They didn't exist in my childhood. And we didn't have light up sneakers. They thought it was funny to scream and yell, literally to come under our bedroom window and scream at us by name. We do have recordings. We have video recordings, we have audio recordings. This year, we may be somewhat better off because out of utter frustration, we have a camera 24/7. It's a shame. It's a shame that it comes to that. You should also know this building is south of our home. There are 6 apartments of students directly north of our home. Every once in a while, they forget to bring their trash cans in, and they pull their trash can down the driveway after 10. It is not all students. It is students specifically related to this one property owner. The rent for this presumably 4-bedroom, 2-bath property is $11,375 a month. I was blown away when I found that on the internet.
At this time, does anyone else from the board like to ask any questions? Board Member Lovich?
Yeah, I just had one quick question about contact you've had with the owner of the building over the years.
The owner of the building is a medical doctor, presumably. He was educated in Mumbai. He lives in Maryland. His sons, who are UC Berkeley graduates, presumably manage the building. I use the word presumably for the number of 311 calls for trash, or the number of police calls, etc. The most recent response I have had from them, I sent them by text. The city has written to the owner at various times. I've eventually sent notes to them about how important sleep is. A good deal of the research done by the University of California, which has some very good research group. Sparish Mehta, who is about 36 years old, he's not a kid. His response to me was KYS, which means kill yourself.
And that's the last question. I'm gonna go ahead and close that out, and we're gonna have the police department in response.
Yes, Lieutenant Reese, if you want to provide any response, at this time, you have the opportunity to do so.
I wasn't prepared to speak on this topic, but seems like some of your issues might be addressed through the zoning department. A lot of it is not so much police related, but some of the
And I
behavior,
tried.
some of the behavior you're describing is police related. Such as standing under your window, yelling at you, calling you by name.
Calling me some very unpleasant names.
So Penal Code Section 415 is a criminal code that would cover that behavior. And if you were willing to make a citizen's arrest, that is something that could be dealt with on the scene by an officer. It would probably be dealt with a citation instead of a physical arrest, depending on what they were saying to you. But if they were threatening you, that could change that a little bit also.
There have been many threats. I've been assaulted, threatened verbally, physically threatened, knocked down on the sidewalk. They mistakenly bumped into me. When the officer came, they said it was he said, she said, and therefore they couldn't do anything. There has been one citation. That was from January 29th of this year. The drunken crowd decided, and were very clear that what they were doing was retaliation. The drunken crowd decided at 4 o'clock on a Sunday morning to take various items in their kitchen, throw them through the closed window of their living unit into our garden. We had just rebuilt our garden.
So in the future, I would recommend that if you're calling for service to the police department, if you're not getting satisfactory response, ask to speak to a supervisor.
I've done that and been hung up on.
Well, that shouldn't be happening. Call back and ask for the watch commander. But some of the things you're describing.
Officer Valier did in fact write them up.
Yeah, some of the things you're describing are criminal, some of them are not, but there are things that we should be able to help with. And if you don't think you're getting that help, I would ask for a supervisor.
And I hear that, I try.
I would encourage you to keep trying. I'm sorry it didn't work out the first time.
It's been 6.5 years.
Yeah, and I would also recommend there are civil remedies you might want to consult with an attorney.
The attorneys that we've spoken to date are members of, used to be members of the district attorney's office and are past and current members of the attorney general's. They're not happy with what has happened to us.
Are they able to help you?
They can't help me unless, they can't help any of us, unless Berkeley police are willing to write a case number. There's been a total of 1 case number to date, and that was Matthew Valier. The case number is 234506.
I would continue down that path. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the history of your problems, otherwise I could come speak.
Officer,
educated on that.
there were 28 pieces of kitchen equipment, empty bottles of booze, full bottles of cooking oil, a variety of various things thrown through their window into our garden, including a 3-foot-tall sorority football trophy. We asked again and again and again that what would have been thrown through our window would be fingerprinted. Unfortunately, it was more than a month later that Officer Valier got permission to be able to fingerprint the crap that had been thrown into our garden. It's cost us more than $6,000 to make the repair. It would cost us more than $6,000 to sue Dr. Mehta in Maryland. He lives in a lovely house, a big lawn.
And Director, what's the next one?
Yes, so at this time, the board may initiate a review of a BPD policy, practice, or procedure upon a majority vote. And this is, I'm reading from the standard rule, so for policy complaints or policy reviews, board members shall then determine how to proceed. Possible actions include, but are not limited to, considering the issue as a whole board, assigning a board member to research the issue, asking staff to investigate or research the issue, or establishing a subcommittee. If a subcommittee is created, it will seek BPD involvement in this policy review, and upon completing this review, will present its conclusions and recommendations to the full board.
Thank you, Director.
Ms. White, can I just get your police report number you have about somebody?
About the case number,
Yeah, if that's the only one you had, it's.
there's only one. 23-4506. Officer Valier surprised us. He's the first officer other than Officer Wade who came into the situation. I have cell phone video of him giving very good, appropriate comment to these habitual drunks. And we very much appreciated what he did. Shortly after this case, even though there were no fingerprints, so we couldn't identify which of the drunks. The drunks insisted that a homeless person had broken into the kitchen and gone upstairs into the kitchen, and that a homeless person was responsible for everything that had happened. Sergeant Valier was not by. Shortly after Sergeant Valier wrote this, 7 of the current residents moved out. And it took almost 4 months for this property owner to replace the broken window in January.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So I'm gonna bring it back to the board, but we decide if we wanna take this up as a board, take this up as a subcommittee, have one of the analysts take a look at this, or have one of us take a look at this. So I'm gonna open this up for discussion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and we'll figure out a way forward. Member Leverage.
Yeah, well, wanted to thank you, Ms. White, for being here tonight. I'm sorry for what you've been going through for so many years. I would move that we ask staff to investigate this before establishing a subcommittee or taking this up.
Specifically, what I'm interested in is, how the department handles noise complaints, and especially like repeated escalating, like that's the part to me that's sort of unclear. Is there how do you do that? So specifically, it's like noise complaints and then this escalating. This is not just a one-off, it's like the pattern, the repeated, like, is there a way that that's dealt with? So I agree with Board Member Leftwich that we need more of that research and context to understand.
And I believe part of the policy complaint and the suggestion was that the cell phones that are given by the department would have a noise
Sound level meter.
yeah, noise metric, sound level meter. I don't think that's something that's beyond the pale there. We can work about that. That's extra equipment. Yes, please.
One question I have is, this seems like Lieutenant mentioned to be an intersection of municipal code, zoning regulations, and also Berkeley Police, and I wonder what our jurisdiction is when we review policy. And
we focus strictly on what's in front of us in our purview. So anything outside of transparency and police accountability, we're not able to.
Right.
Now, we can suggest and we can make recommendations, but no one in any other department is. Yes.
You can share more and for Board Member Cayetano and members of the public. Based on our conversations with Mrs. White in our preliminary research, we did provide a memo on page 22 and 23, and we identified some potential areas of review, and I think they're consistent with her presentation today. So BPD's response time and prioritization of noise complaints issues. BPD policy 1200 and 1202 discuss that. BPD's enforcement of noise standards in Berkeley. BPD policy 1200 and 1202 again. And BPD's role in civil disputes for resolving neighbor conflicts. BPD policy 430 has some language there. So we've done some preliminary review. We can continue to do more for them.
And just, I'm gonna read these recommendations by the office, for the record, just so everybody's on the same page and it can inform our discussion. The recommendations of the ODPA, upon receiving a policy, let's just get to it. Sending the policy complaint and assigning a board member to investigate. Sending the policy complaint directing ODPT staff to carry out. Sending the policy complaint and establishing subcommittee to investigate. Temporarily deferring acceptance of the policy complaint and assigning a board member to investigate before formal acceptance. And then doing the same thing instead of having staff to do that. And there's of course rejecting the complaint completely. Board member Leftwich does have a motion on the floor, and I want to make sure that we recognize that. Board member Leftwich says, hey, we should defer the acceptance of policy complaint and instruct ODPA to investigate this matter moving forward and coming back to the board.
Was it to defer it or accept it and ask for investigation?
It's to defer formal acceptance of the complaint and ask staff to come back to us with a report which discusses the various relevant policies.
For the directors, is there a difference between accepting and deferring before initiating investigation?
Some complaints may at face value be strictly outside of jurisdiction, so you could just make the decision there. In a complaint where you're trying to get more information to determine, it might be appropriate to do preliminary research like the one suggested here.
I very rarely do this, but I'm going to second the motion on the floor here. And then ask you guys to vote on it. I believe that is the best way to move forward. Lieutenant Reese, I know to work with you guys on this to figure out.
Yeah.
And I think, in addition, like zoning, I think the rent board would have a piece of this. We obviously have a piece of it, but there's
A lot of players in this.
Yeah, I agree.
There are a great many pieces.
Yep.
The rent board says, I am not a resident of the building. The building code enforcement is upset that I keep pointing out to them that there's no safe fire exit from the building. And that doesn't directly affect us, except when the drunks come in and they can't get around the car to get to the door. So the building department decided, instead of doing anything about this building, they brought an inappropriate complaint about our garden wall, misstating that our garden wall is built in the public right of way, which it is not.
Has the fire marshal inspected that residence?
The fire marshal has not responded to email. Do I sound frustrated?
For good reason.
Right.
It's only been 6.5 years.
Go ahead and get a vote on this.
And Mrs. White, we're going to the board's gonna make a vote on this, if I may. So we have a motion on the floor from board member Leftwich, to defer, acceptance and to allow staff to conduct a preliminary review and further review of the complaints as brought forth by Mrs. White. It was seconded by Chair Moore. If we could get, board member, Calavita. You're on mute.
Yes, I actually have a question about the motion. It doesn't sound so much like a deferral to me as it does asking the staff to investigate and report back to us. That sounds like a kind of acceptance of the policy complaint with some request for more information. Is this defined as a deferral?
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, and,
We're not accepting until we get the investigation from
okay,
the agents.
well,
That's,
on the substance of it, I agree, yes.
And that language, board member Calavita, was on page 24 as one of the fifth recommendations and alternative.
Yes, I've been looking for it, yeah.
Difference between 2 and 5, that was my question too, like.
Yeah.
It's 2.
Board member Lethbridge,
Yes.
board member Blackley,
Yes.
board member Cayetano,
Yes.
and Chair Moore.
yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Chair, may I just make one final comment about that?
Of course.
The reason I asked the question about calling it a deferral is because I hope that Ms. White does not think that we've put this off. We're actually pursuing further information about it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. That being said, that brings us to agenda item 11, new business. 11A, presentation of new policy complaints. Policy complaint number 2023 PR 0006.
Mr. Chair, this complaint was also brought forth by Mrs. White. In the information regarding that complaint is on the packet, starting on page
56.
56. Thank you. We can follow the same procedure, allow 5 minutes for Mrs. White to provide a presentation to the board about this complaint.
This one's pretty simple. Every year, certain number of UC Berkeley students come with their cars with out-of-state plates. I've checked with the Attorney General's office. There is a requirement that you have a California plate in order to be able to get a parking permit. Nonetheless, all over the Elmwood district, there are cars with Nevada plates and Washington state plates and whatever. And they are never ticketed. Never ticketed. Those of us who have California plates, we get ticketed. But if it's an out-of-state plate, it's just there. And nothing happens. So if you think about it as a parent, and I'm soon to be a great grandparent, the first time your child does something that's dangerous, you need to talk to the child. It's been over 10 years since any out-of-state plate in our neighborhood was ticketed. There's currently a trailer, a camper trailer, parked on Garber Street. It's been there 5 months, 6 months. It has a California plate, but it can't move. It's frustrating to us. The year of the third year, the Game Boys, the very aggressive, very unpleasant Game Boys, very assaultive Game Boys. There was a car from Washington. It's well documented in email to the police. That car was never ticketed through 3 terms. He drove like everything else he did, blowing his horn, turning corners too fast, parking in people's gardens, parking on the sidewalk, whatever. He was never ticketed for 3 terms. This year, we have 1 Washington State plate and 1 Nevada plate. The Nevada plate is much more generous with parking in red zones and people's driveways. The Washington State plate this time is better behaved, but never, ever taken it.
Thank you. So at this point, I'm gonna open up to the board if there's any questions. Ms. White about this? Not seeing or hearing any, nope, okay. That would take it to
Public comment.
public comment.
For any members of the public that are attending, if you'd like to make a comment on this policy complaint before the board at this time, please raise your hand icon so we can acknowledge you. I see one participant would be, I am going to allow you to talk. You're on with the board. If you could unmute yourself.
Sorry, this was just for earlier. I no comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other hand icons.
Then I'll give it to you again, Senator, I don't know.
I'm not sure what to say other than to call our parking enforcement when you see.
I did that. Both of them in person. Put a chair next to the Washington car. The first one, for the Game Boys. We gave each year a different name. The first one were pathetic party boys who got drunk. The next one were the screamers. The third year were the Game Boys. Literally put a chair on the sidewalk next to the car, waited for parking enforcement to come by. The response was, it's too much work. They're out of state, it's too much work.
It seems like a terrible answer.
A group of other neighbors decided that they would follow up. There are 8 of us who have specifically spoken in person to parking enforcement. To date, there's been no change.
I would recommend, like I said, speaking to their supervisor, and although there are civilian supervisors for the parking enforcement, ultimately they report to a captain in the police department. And if you're getting answers that are that satisfactory, I would be working my way up and getting to the captain and ultimately. Because I just don't see where that answer flies.
We've prioritized trying to deal with the assaultive nature of the students living next to us. This is by far a secondary issue. But my point is that by not enforcing the simple laws, the students truly believe that they've been given permission. And that permission is specifically spoken of by, for example, the Game Boys, who said over and over and over again, nobody will ticket us, nobody will stop us. We are University of California students.
It's a little bit of a flipping window theory going on.
A little bit? How much sleep have you had in the last 6.5 years? I am greatly depressed. I've been sufficiently depressed at times that getting out of bed in the morning was a great accomplishment. I've been denied sleep as many as 14 nights in a row, screaming and yelling and pushing the boundaries of civility way beyond breaking.
Not right now because of the public forum, but I would like to know the address of the house we're speaking of. Because I think it's redacted in most of these, but at the end of the meeting, maybe we should do that.
I was actually gonna ask Lieutenant Reese, would you be willing to serve as, and have direct contact so that you could help facilitate some resolution
Yeah,
of this
that's
dispute? Because
okay with this one.
that would be great, because I feel like, although I have a lot of sympathy for you and it sounds extremely frustrating, I feel like this particular one, especially regarding the enforcement of out-of-state, ticketing of out-of-state vehicles is beyond a bit beyond the PAB's purview. So, but we want to help you. So if you'd be willing to facilitate some sort of a resolution.
Yeah, we can talk afterwards.
I don't know.
That'll be helpful. I can read that.
Excellent. So that would take us to where we open this up, and once again, we have the same options to decide if we want to accept, defer, if we want an investigation. We just gave one to staff. No, I don't, board member Leftwich just opened up our discussion and said she doesn't believe this is a review. I think we need to take that up before we talk about what our next steps.
Yeah, real quickly, the director, and know in the memo, the recommendation was to have assign a board member to work with the lieutenant. Just curious, again, thought process there, just so we know how you guys are reviewing this.
Sure, so the parking enforcement is not done to our understanding by the sworn office per se, but there's a lieutenant that oversees. So that lieutenant would be within, I guess, your jurisdiction and any policies related. We do believe that there's more information that we need to gather here. I would be interested to see if the department has done any data analysis of any disparities in the enforcement of parking. Surely we have that data, what tickets we're issuing, but it'd be interesting to see, has there been some sort of analysis there? Are we giving more tickets to, California versus out of state? And that might be policy implications there, but.
Our neighborhood, it would be 10-0.
Any other board members, would you get any thoughts, anything else you'd like to put on the table?
It sounds to me, it looks to me, I'm not sure that this is appropriate for a policy review because there aren't any policies that talk about not ticketing out-of-state cars. And therefore, I mean, I appreciate that Lieutenant Reese is going to be talking with Ms. White informally, but on the surface, it sounds to me that this is more an individual complaint of misconduct in terms of, I mean, I don't want to call it misconduct so much, but we have complaints where people argue that there is insufficient investigation or insufficient police work. And so I'm not even sure that this is a policy complaint per se.
Well, the only reason that I believe it is a policy complaint is because she's saying there is an unwritten policy about not giving tickets to out-of-state plates. And if there is, there's a disparity that we should look into, and that's my director.
And just one other note under your policy review powers is policy, practice, or procedure. So it might not be technical policy, but it could be a practice or some sort of procedure that's taking place.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well,
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
I will guarantee you there is no practice amongst these sworn officers of not enforcing anything without a state plates.
right.
I can't speak for the parking enforcement world. I'm 99.9% sure that writing a parking citation for a California plate versus a Florida plate is the same. I don't know if there's a headache on the back end that they're trying to avoid, but
I hear you. No, I think that's what we need to look into, yeah. And I will extend my time, energy, and effort to this. And I will make a motion to put myself up to be the board member who will investigate this policy.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Have you seen this besides, on your own street? Have you any evidence of disparate, treatment of out of state license plates beyond what we're doing on your street?
Friends who live in other districts, we live in the Elmwood.
Okay.
The Elmwood is heavily populated with students. Some friends in North Berkeley, when I have commented on it, said, oh yeah. Among your friends, you don't want to be the person who's always talking about the sad things in your life. So for the most part, we didn't talk to friends about any of this. But something like a parking complaint, hell, you can write that one on next door.
Well, there is a motion on the floor.
Second your motion.
Thank you.
Okay, so motion on the floor for, to assign Chair Moore to investigate this, and bring back his, findings to the board, seconded by Board Member Leftwich. Going through roll call vote, Board Member Calavita,
Yes.
Board Member Leftwich,
Yes.
Board Member Blackaby,
Yes.
Board Member Cayetano,
Yes.
Chair Moore,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously.
Right. I think the data would be interesting both in citations, but also like, can you actually look at collections? Like, it'd be really interesting to look at both of those actually.
I think that's probably the issue, the collection.
Yeah, exactly.
One more question. The person that texted you, the KYS, was that a city employee?
No, that is the middle 30s-year-old son of the owner.
Just wanted to make sure.
Who is, no. I've had some very unpleasant responses from some police officers, but nothing close to this.
So,
Mostly what I've heard from police officers is frustration. That they feel as though they don't have the tools they need to do the job that they're being asked to do. And I agree with them. And secondarily, why in heaven's name is a uniformed officer dealing with noise complaints? There's one noise control officer in the city of Berkeley. He works 4 days a week, 9 to 5.
so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go to the last one of our complaints for this evening, and that's 2008. Director, can you give us some background, please?
So this particular, and thank you, Ms. Swain, this particular complaint was brought before us after, or on the day of your last meeting. We weren't able to make it onto the agenda, so we brought it forward. Now, this is concerns that were inspired by recent events and allegation regarding off-duty conduct. We have heard already some commentary about off-duty conduct, and you have, after this discussion, potential action on creating a subcommittee. So for this particular policy complaint, it was our recommendation to, there's various areas where this could be potentially explored. So we made a recommendation to consider putting it in one of those existing work frames that we're doing already. But if the complainant is available, then they can provide a presentation in 5 minutes on the other complaints. And the complainant for this case is Haley Arbog. do believe she is on with the, joining us remotely, if you will allow me to.
Please.
Okay. Okay, Avery, you on with the board? Please unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, so my name is Avery Arbaugh. I'm a community member and a student, and I submitted this report as part of a coalition of students who feel as if Berkeley police officers have been able to act violently and with racist motivations towards our community with impunity due to the lack of proper and consistent enforcement by the Berkeley Police Department. Central to this complaint is Officer Sergeant Marble, but we also recognize that this pattern of the continued employment of violent and racist police officers is systemic and cannot be singularly represented by one individual. So Sergeant Marble's misconduct can be represented by two key incidents. Incident one is an incident of racial profiling. On July 2nd, 2017, Sergeant Marble racially profiled a Black man in establishing reasonable suspicion. Sergeant Marble stopped a Black man near People's Park after the Black man was arguing with an acquaintance about cigarettes. Sergeant Marble explicitly stated that the man was stopped because he was Black, and thus matched the description of an earlier unrelated police report. When the man questioned Marble's reasoning for stopping him, Marble interrupted him by saying, "Don't give me that Black crap." Marble escalated the situation by falsely detaining the man and putting him in handcuffs, and another police officer pinned the man to the ground. The encounter ended with the falsely detained man being let go. Incident two is an off-duty racist attack on Brian Lyndhurst Jr. by Sergeant Marble. On July 16th, 2022, Sergeant Marble physically assaulted and yelled racial slurs at Brian Lyndhurst Jr., and Lyndhurst filed the lawsuit Lyndhurst versus City of Berkeley on August 31st, 2023 in response to this. Lyndhurst in the lawsuit alleges that on July 16th, 2022, Lyndhurst was visiting a friend in Antioch who was a neighbor of Marble's, and the lawsuit alleges that Marble approached Lyndhurst and his friend without legal justification, repeatedly yelled the N-word and "you do not belong here" at Lyndhurst, and invoked his status as a police officer by saying, "I am the law," in a way to assert authority. He also punched Lyndhurst in the face, cocked and pointed a semi-automatic handgun at Lyndhurst's face, and after Lyndhurst's friend pleaded for several minutes with Sergeant Marble not to shoot Lyndhurst, Sergeant Marble finally lowered his gun and walked back inside his home. The lack of Sorry, was there someone saying something?
Please go ahead.
Okay. The lack of transparent steps taken by the Berkeley Police Department to respond to these incidents and others like it, and the continued employment of Sergeant Marble in particular, to us indicates a lack of willingness by the Berkeley Police Department to protect our community from officers who have demonstrated racist and violent behavior, or to address racism within the Berkeley Police Department in general. Our key policy recommendations are to have a full independent investigation into both incidents involving Sergeant Marble, with a particular focus on whether Sergeant Marble faced any repercussions pertaining to the policy violations we alleged, and whether the response by the department to these incidents was appropriate. Given the rampant non-enforcement of internal policies by the Berkeley Police Department, we also strongly urge the city to adopt more robust enforcement mechanisms for this body, the Police Accountability Board, including a role in crafting more comprehensive anti-racist hiring practices, oversight over punishment for violations of department policy, and transparency in steps taken by the Berkeley Police Department to enforce internal policies against racial profiling and other racial violence. The
Thank you,
Berkeley
sir.
Police.
We've hit our time limit here.
Okay.
At this time, Chair Moore, you can allow members of the public to make comments up to 3 minutes, subject to your discretion. Are there any members of the public present that would like to comment on this policy complaint? Are there any members of the public joining us virtually that would like to make comments? Please raise your hand icon. I do see one hand. I am going to promote Mr. Nathan Micel. Mr. Micel, you on with the board? You have 3 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director. Good to see those of you there who are my colleagues, and for the new folks, I need to meet all of you, honestly. It's been too long. Let me say really briefly, I know it's supposed to be about the complaint, but congratulations to the new commissioner. I'm looking forward to meeting you soon, and I'm, really encouraged that we're getting members back on this body that is of utmost importance in the city, or at least should be. Getting to the complaint at hand, I just want to speak briefly in my support of it, and I already see that the board has taken, action in terms of creating a subcommittee to focus on off-duty issues, and I could see this complaint fitting well into that. I think it's pretty clear that in our city, we have a problem with racism in our police department. And if even, frankly, 1/10 of the complaint is true and the allegations are true in terms of how they involve Sergeant Marble, we now know we would have multiple racists working in the Berkeley Police Department. And seemingly little recourse in our policies has been offered in fixing either issue. But as it pertains to Sergeant Marble, I think we're left to wonder, and I know much of this will be left confidential, and sadly the public won't find out because that's kind of the reality of state law right now. But whatever we can find out in terms of our policies and practices as they pertain to off-duty officers, how the department holds them accountable or doesn't, I think that has to be found out and made public and made as expressly available as possible. And I think this complaint is one step in that direction. I guess, as I've already said, immensely concerned with, the behavior of the department and what we have learned about our department in the past 18 months. And this allegation is yet another striking suggestion that the policies we have on the books may be sufficient, they may be not, or they may simply not be enforced. And I really believe that the board has a role in finding the answers to those questions. So I'd really encourage you to accept this complaint. I trust your judgment on how to best manage it, but I do think it's necessary at this time. And as always, I wish you all the best with the work. I know how hard and stressful it can be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any additional members of the public that would like to make a comment? Please raise your hand icon. So we're gonna promote you to speak. Mr. Chair, I do not see any additional hand raised.
Okay. That's consistent in the very familiar corner have we been tonight, where we get to decide how we want to approach this as the board. We can go over the options and figure out if we want to take this to our subcommittee, which I do agree with the comment from Mr. Mizell, that it does fit nicely within the subcommittee that we were working towards creating. We can also have not only somebody within the office to investigate, but if a board member wants to take it upon themselves to run points on this and bring it back to the board, I'm open to that as well. But before we accept that figure, we need to discuss. We figure out if the board and see how this is gonna work out. Please, Reverend Lepage.
Well, I think this is a crucial issue. I'm just wondering if it makes sense to fold this into the work of the Fair and Impartial Policing Subcommittee rather than creating a new subcommittee, but I would like to ask Board Member Calavita about that option. I wouldn't want to create a redundant subcommittee.
Yeah, you're on mute, Board Member Calavita.
Besides me, mutes me. Okay, that's exactly what I was going to say. And so there are two prongs to this. One has to do with the off-duty conduct, and that we can fold into the next item that we're going to be discussing. And the other is the fair and impartial policing aspect. And the recommendations that, I think that the recommendations that the Fair and Impartial Policing Subcommittee will have in its report will be relevant to this and answer this as far as is possible in the context of state law. So I don't know whether that means we accept the complaint and fold our response to it into these other two subcommittees, or whether it means we don't officially accept their complaint because we're doing it through these two subcommittees. I don't know how it's titled. I don't know what to call it, but we're going to be addressing the issues that were raised in these two ways.
My concern is because of the seriousness and the impactfulness of this situation, that Fair and Impartial and the other subcommittee that already have so much on their plate, that will they have the time and energy to focus on the actual circumstances that happened here? I don't want it to get lost in the sauce. So that would be my concern. One, we're splitting it up. So we're taking it and we're already dissecting it. And then I don't want to dilute it at the same time, where we're not able to give it the focus it deserves because it's only one element within Fair and Impartial. Now, I'm not saying that we should make a subcommittee or that anyone should investigate. I'm just relaying my concerns.
Well, we're not able to do an investigation of the individual incident. In any case, the incident that he's talking about, the practices and policies that are relevant to that are exactly those things that we will be making recommendations on in the Fair and Impartial report. So,
But are you saying, Board Member Calavita, that the Fair and Impartial only deals with on-duty conduct, and so in your view, we need to create the subcommittee or accept this complaint to address enforcement of off-duty policies, or could it all go within Fair and Impartial, both off-duty and on-duty?
The laws.
I don't know, but I guess I just assumed we're going to be creating a subcommittee for off-duty conduct.
Well, we talked about, I had raised that at our last meeting as something to put on the agenda to discuss. But that was before I saw this complaint, and also the very helpful memo that Ms. Verger had prepared. And it seems to me that this is primarily an enforcement issue, not so much that there aren't policies out there, but they aren't being enforced. So we haven't created the subcommittee yet. The question is, should we, or would it be redundant to the work of Fair and Impartial?
Direction.
Just a gentle reminder before you continue, just process-wise, you still have the complaint if you want to ask some questions, and you also have the BPD response.
Okay, let me just say that I believe that some of these issues will also be discussed in the context of the Downtown Task Force report, in which we're going to be making policy recommendations. And there we talk about on-duty and off-duty. It's not clear to me that we need a subcommittee on off-duty conduct because we have policies in the department already that include on duty and off duty. And part of what we'll be doing in the downtown task force report is seeking to strengthen some of those things. And so I think between the fair and impartial recommendations and the downtown task force recommendations, to the extent that the PAB is empowered to pursue the kinds of things that this complainant is asking, and we are not empowered to do individual investigations into wrongdoing. To that extent, we will be doing that through these other two venues. So,
right.
Yeah.
Did Lieutenant Reese have anything?
Let's,
okay.
yeah,
Sorry.
we're gonna get to that.
Okay.
Let's go with the board. We have some questions and then we'll have Lieutenant Reese.
I just have one question, without having any prior knowledge of what the fair and impartial policing subcommittee or the bike committee is doing right now. The director provided a list of EPD policies that seems to be more comprehensive than what is covered under fair and impartial policing. It includes, 306.4, 321.2, 321.511, and all these other policies that cover off-duty policing. So I wonder if those ones would be included in that report. Because it seems to me that there's at least more than 20, there's more than 20 ones that cover off-duty policing, and with the policy complaint specifying that the incident occurred with a police officer who was off-duty and using his badge, so to speak, and his ethos as police officer to allegedly assault a citizen of the public. I think that it's worth considering, like the chair mentioned, not to dilute the issue, and examining all of them together as a bundle, especially given the legal analysis that was brought up later about off-duty, like how much Berkeley can regulate off-duty officers.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Lieutenant Reese, you're up.
I apologize, I've been very distracted with a real life incident going on at the moment. So, based on that, unless you ask me a direct question right now, I don't have a comment.
Well, I hear you. Do any of you guys have a direct question for Lieutenant Reese that you want answered?
Yeah. Do you know what happened after the 2017 incident that they were referring to? If there was any.
Right, so I guess.
Do you have any questions for the complainant that's still available? Anybody?
So we have questions for the complainant, Mr. Arbaugh? I think so. I think we're good. Okay. So I think we're at the point now where we're continuing this conversation. I'm open to entertaining motions. It's just about where we feel comfortable here and how we want to proceed.
I mean, I think we should accept the complaint. My issue was then where it goes, but, and so I don't know if that needs to be encompassed in a motion to accept it, but.
I share Board Member Cayetano's just the question about like the specific focus on all the off-duty stuff. The Board Member Calavita believes like we're gonna have that ability through, because again, you're much closer to what's happening on the bike task force. But if we feel like we're gonna have a pretty comprehensive look at that as part of that, that's okay by me. But I agree that it feels like there's sort of there's something in this off-duty piece that just needs some looking at somewhere. So, and a consistent kind of overall thoughtful approach to it. So I share that sense, and it's like, if we think we can do it through an existing subcommittee, great. But if we think that like some of the horse is already out of the barn, and I'm gonna mix metaphors, and it's already gone down, right? And it might be too late to bring it back in, then maybe we need a separate effort. So but I defer to Board Member Calavita on where she thinks she is in the process and whether she could, whether this naturally fits in there or there's something else here that requires more review.
Or perhaps if you could use more board members, because now that we have more board members, perhaps if we kept it within the confines of the two existing subcommittees, but had additional board members to help out with that work. I mean, I don't know if that would be enough or not, but.
Board Member Calvita, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I want to give this complaint its due because it raises very important issues. So I don't want to dilute its importance by, but it is the case that the the policies that the staff has singled out as including off-duty are policies that are either going to be in the fair and impartial report or the downtown task force report. And in those reports, we will not be making reference to individual incidents so much. Well, in the downtown task force, we are going to. But, so I don't know what to say. I'd be happy if some other members of the board want to come forward and say that they will be responsible for ensuring that this particular complaint gets its due through an independent investigation. I'm too busy on these other two reports, but
not ask you. However,
so
it's nice. I think you're onto something, Kitty, and I hate to interrupt, but I'm gonna parlay that into asking our new members if they're ready to go ahead and get their hands dirty. So that being said, I think this is a great opportunity for us to take a look at this from a board member investigative perspective. Just if this is something that we should give the time and attention to, and maybe come back and say, hey, this is so big in scope and scale. I need a subcommittee. We need to get this bigger. We need to open this up. But we know we need to accept. At least I'm gonna assume we're all thinking we should accept this. How do we go about it? And in my personal opinion, I would love if someone would go ahead and take the reins and say they want to be the point on this.
I would be happy to take the lead on it. I do agree with board member Lefkovich,
Yeah.
Lefkovich, that it could be subsumed into the next agenda item as well. So I don't know what the procedure is for that, but if we want to recommend just an individual board member do it, I'm happy to take the action on that.
Excellent. I would love to accept that. That is music to my ears. And if you need any help, consider me a resource. I will give you my information. We can work on it together.
Great, thank you.
Of course. Go ahead, Director.
So just so we're clear for the record, was that a motion or is that
I
a
just
gentleman's agreement?
I just said, yeah. And we're done. No, would someone like to give a motion? And I would love to.
So I guess I would move to accept the complaint and appoint board member Cayetano take the lead on conducting the research for that.
Excellent.
Do you have a second?
A second.
A motion on the floor, board member Calavita,
yes.
board member Lefkovich,
Yes.
board member Blackerby,
Yes.
board member Cayetano,
Yes.
Chair Moore,
Yes.
passes unanimous.
Which brings us to the continuing discussion that we're already in the midst of, and that's action regarding the creation of a new subcommittee for the review of off-duty conduct. I think it sounds like we're gonna put some time on this, see if we need it.
Right, I think we can defer that. I think it's some potentially moot at this point.
I'm ready for it, but it will be there, and I'm ready for it.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask, was there one other policy in play also that we need to look at? I just want to make sure we don't miss one.
No.
5, 6. There's number 7, right?
Yeah, 7, yeah.
Before we skip it.
I thought that was, a part of your discretion and I.
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
70, 71, page 70, 71.
no, sorry, and thank you.
No worries.
Well, I appreciate that.
If I may, with that one, it was our recommendation that you defer any decision. We do have a parallel personnel complaint that we're currently investigating. And your rules indicate that you should, hearing panel members should stay away from making any policy commentary. And then you could be a hearing panel member, so it's our recommendation to hold off this time.
I'm gonna make a motion that we take the director's recommendation on 0007.
Second.
Excellent.
So is that motion passed by consent?
I believe this motion passes by consent. That was important cleanup. Thank you. And that takes us to agenda item 12, public comment.
Chair,
Yes.
may I just say that I'm leaving the meeting now. The reason for my absence is that I'm under the weather and I think I've had about as much as I can do.
I appreciate you so much for sticking it through. And get well, board member Calvino. I'm pulling for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Public comment section, we have one member of the public present with us that would like to comment.
Once again, I'd like to speak about something specific. The chief of the city council last night mentioned that they're really concerned about the Jewish population in Berkeley. I'm concerned about them also, but I'm also concerned about the Muslim Arab population of Berkeley. I held up a Palestinian flag at the Israeli gathering yesterday at Upper Straw Plaza, and there was a very vicious bunch of Zionist people who came and harassed us just for being there. I think there's been too much favor given to the Israelis and not enough given to the Arab Muslim population. The Palestinian people have suffered a long time. 75 years they've been occupied. Every day for the last year, they've accelerated the aggression against the people of Palestine by the Israelis. Their homes have been destroyed. Collective punishment, which is against international law. Moving people in to the West Bank, which is against international law. They've been getting away with it constantly. So it's not like the people of Palestine arose Saturday and said, "What are you going to do today, Abdul?" Well, let's attack occupied Palestine 48 under the name of Israel. There's a history of retribution against the people of Palestine just for existing. The Israelis want the people of Palestine out of there. They've been committing genocide. And it's such a shame as well as like an abused child goes on, if they're not looked after and taken into consideration, goes on to abuse their children. The Israelis have been abused horribly, and now they're abusing the people of Palestine. They've been doing it for 75 years. I just want people to keep that in mind also. I mean, don't get me wrong, I hate war. War is the worst thing you can imagine. I mean, it's beyond imagination. So keep that in mind. That's all I'm asking. You know, just there's people out there dying, there's people out there killing people, and once war starts, all the rules go out the window. You see the worst side of people that you can imagine, but you can also see the best side you can imagine also. So it's a matter of choice. You know, don't let fear is a choice. Danger is something that happens, but fear is a choice. So don't accept that choice. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for our members of the public who are joining us remotely, right now is the public comment section. If you raise your hand icon, we can promote you to speaker. Are there any members of the public joining us remotely that would like to address the board at this time? Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any raised hand icons at this time.
That takes us to agenda item 13, which is closed session.
Thank you, members of the public. Please be advised at this time, we'll be closing the meeting for a closed session. You can remain in the webinar. We will be stopping the recording and returning to close off the meeting after the closed session.
That's the end of the closed session. With our right here. Church. We've sustained 4 cases, modified 2, updated ourselves with upcoming cases, and that was what happened in closed session. And now I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Yeah. There we go. Well done, everyone. Come on.